Hey guys, my name's Theobald Hedman and you're watching Southern Ingenuity. The subject of today's video is the result of a direct request from the lovely Mrs. Hedman herself. That's right, she came to me here a while back and said, honey, you know how I love to garden and I know how you like to play in the shop, so why don't you make me a handheld seed planter so I don't have to bend down to plant those seeds? And I said, consider it done, babe, because I got the tools, the talent, and the time on my hands. So I rounded up some scrap material from around the shop here and made her very own, slightly over-engineered handheld seed planter. And this video is going to show you just how I did it, so let's get started. If you've watched my videos before, then you probably know I often use scrap material to build my project. Today I'll be using part of an old garden trellis and an old department store clothing rack to make the planter. And I'll start by cutting the trellis to make the handle and the upper seed tube. This is one of the leveling adjusters on the bottom side of the clothing rack, and I'm going to remove it and set it aside, and we'll come back to it later in the video. As you can see, these tubes fit together really well. The larger one's going to become the gate mechanism, and the smaller one will become the lower seed tube and the spade. The spade is going to have a pointed tip with an opening on the backside. This will allow it to be pushed down into the soil to get the seed below the surface. The gate is going to cover the back side of the spade. After the seed has been dropped in, the gate will be lifted, thus depositing the seed below the ground surface. This little piece of metal is a stop to keep the gate from sliding off the end of the spade. I always try to make the most of what I've got available to me. Even the smallest piece of scrap material can sometimes be just what you need to make something for your project. Here I'm going to use the old mounting brackets from the trellis to make brackets for the retaining spring and for actuating the gate mechanism. Off camera, I made this small clamping bracket, and it's going to be part of the depth gauge assembly, and there'll be more on that a little later on in the video. The bottom rack from an old cheap barbecue grill is going to work perfectly to make the actuating rod and the depth gauge assembly. I need to cut some threads on one end of the actuating rod so it can be attached to the gate mechanism. After that, I bend the opposite end 90 degrees to make a trigger type handle. Remember that leveling adjuster from earlier in the video? I'm going to use it to make a bushing to keep the spring centered on the actuating rod. Well, now we're going to move on to the depth gauge assembly. This little thin metal disc is going to be the stop plate. The depth gauge is going to be adjustable, and it will allow the user to consistently plant the seeds at the desired depth. As you can see, with the depth gauge locked in position, the gate still slides freely on the lower seed tube. After drilling a hole for the actuator rod to pass through, it's time to connect the upper and lower seed tubes together. The dimensions of the mating surfaces is almost the same, so they hold together really well with a tight interference fit. The last thing to do before testing is to attach a funnel for dropping the seeds into the tube. An old plastic bottle works perfectly.